conversation, which leads to why we're here today. And it was helped me clarify this, something about applying a supervision modality to people who are not coaches. And then my curiosity really sparked when you talked about doing that. And it's not the first time that I've heard people talk about that. I think Robin Showett has done the same on one or more of his webinars.
So if I say I think everybody needs a supervisor, it's that part of the relationship piece that if I recognize that I'm stuck in a relationship or there's a challenge, be it transference, counter-transference, projection, or whatever it is, if I understand that ultimately I'm the one who has to make the shift in order to shift the relationship, that's how I understand supervision in process and principle. And I think that's true of anybody in relationship. And so that means we can all do that work. And I think of that as fundamentally the process of supervision. And if we understand that, then when we're working as coaches who've been trained as supervisors, we're also working in that way, because you can't unlearn that. You know, anybody who works with people, I think, could reflect on their practice, not in an academic way of content, but in a process way in terms of how do they form relationships that support the benefit of them and their client ultimately.
Thinking about some of the key models that I hold in mind of what starts to create the framework or the scaffolding of supervision. And the main ones that came to mind was the supervision triangle and the 7-eyed model of coach supervision, or the multi-eyed, you know, depending on whose version you want to talk about. And if you take the labels out, so the coach and the client, and you start to put in different people in there, it's very easy to see that that model can apply to anybody, because you're bringing a systems awareness to somebody's life.
I want to offer a perspective in challenge to what both of you have said.
Okay.
I'm hunkering down.
Yeah, go for it.
I think there are market forces at play and there's psychological forces at play which bring people to coaching with an expectation that it's going to have a focus on their doing. That's not where the opportunity for change lies. The opportunity for change lies in the person's internal default reactions to, and after the coaching, their changed responses to the circumstances. So for me, the coaching process involves bringing the client's focus from the external and the doing to the internal and the who. It's about bringing one foot out of the transactional into the transformational, and then looking at how the person finds their own balance. So when can they lean on the transformational aspect, and how does that impact what happens in the transactional aspect? The cognitive aspect of supervision will help the practitioner not only recognize the dynamics unfolding in the case that they bring to supervision, but apply it to future cases and other cases that are playing out in their own present circumstances. And the transformational aspect will be who are they within those relational dynamics, and the one term used to describe the root of that is the core issue. Using theory or a model or a metaphor to understand how that dynamic plays out, so that they know the moves, they know the roles, and they know the solution that they can apply to that circumstance and others. And my argument is that I don't see that that's, I mean, I can understand that it would be beneficial to a non-coach to see those things, but I think they would have limited application for it after the intervention. Then there's this thing called supervision, which because we've labeled it as under a different name, and there's a thing called coaching, and
then there's a thing called psychotherapy, and actually it's no different.
Yeah, and like, do they? Oh, this is dangerous ground. Remember, we're in South Africa.
Oh, no.
So then, like, is there an overlap, like in a Venn diagram, or does the one completely encompass the other? What are the boundaries around each of those? Or is supervision just one part further down the developmental journey of a coach? These are semi-rhetorical questions.
But I think it's once we've learned to be supervisors, we integrate it in how we work.
As coaches?
I think as coaches, because I think the principle and the process applies in all of our engagements.
And I was so intrigued by something you said earlier, Jo, about within the relationship, it's about recognizing help me if I'm wrong, recognizing one's own capacity to work with what the client brings. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you say capacity, there are two ways that I can interpret that. The one is one's personal capacity to be with whatever's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not about what letters are behind your name, or what qualifications you have. And the other way of interpreting it is one's professional or legal capacity, which is about the letters.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I want to link that to something else I said a few moments later, which was about when we work with a person who's becoming stuck due to something that's happened in one of the earlier cycles, to use that model, then we refer because we don't have the qualifications to deal with it. And I thought to myself, well, I might not have the qualifications, but I have the capacity. What is your thinking about this?
Anything I want to add is that it just as we have this conversation, it becomes very more clear, and I know I'm preaching to the converted, of the need for coaches to be in supervision. I mean, because that is where they will learn this. They won't learn it necessarily from coach trainings.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you think is the without propelling us down another rabbit hole, is there a short answer to what do you think is the main thing that stops coaches from coming into supervision?
Oh, I don't know. I think possibly lack of awareness.
How interesting that supervision is like one of the best avenues for awareness.
I know.
Chicken and egg scenario.
I don't know if you were on that call. You know, people say it's the name. I'm trying to find a thing where Robin on that call with Robin Shad, where somebody said they were looking at his book, In Love with Supervision, and his 6-year-old kid came in and she said to him, "Do you know what supervision is? Do you know what that means?" Yes, he says it's a superpower. It means you can see through everything and see what's really there.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, supervision really is. I just want to say it's my superpower.